Welcome. This is my channel, and I tell stories of the mysterious, twisted, and paranormal. So if you're a returning viewer, thank you for coming back. And if you are new to the channel, then welcome. And please consider subscribing and turning on your post notifications. But also get ready, because as of now, we're about to go on a journey. And as we do, we're about to slip into a mind that's not our own. So let's go. I'm just going to prelude with this story is absolutely intense. It might be my favorite story I've ever written, just because as I was writing it, I felt what this woman was going through. And I hope I am able to translate that to you so you can feel the same. In 2008, Donna Penner was booked for an exploratory laparoscopy at a hospital in her home province of Manitoba in Canada. She was 44 and had been experiencing heavy bleeding during that time of the month. Now, she has had general anesthetic before, and she knew she was supposed to have it for this procedure. And she never had a problem with it. But when she got to the hospital, she found herself feeling quite anxious. During a laparoscopy, the surgeon makes incisions into the abdomen through which they will push instruments in so they can take a look around. You have 3 or 4 small incisions instead of one big one. Donna said, "I remember the nurse wheeling me in and saying, 'Don't worry, we're going to take very good care of you.'" And the operation started off quite well. They moved her onto the operating table and started to do all the normal things that they do, like hooking her up to all the monitors, and they started prepping her for the surgery. The anesthesiologist gave her something in an intravenous drip, and then he put a mask on her face and said, "Take a deep breath." So she did, and she drifted off to sleep like she was supposed to do. And when she woke up, she could still, hear the sounds of the operating room. She could hear the staff moving things around and chatting, and the machines going off like the monitors. She thought, "Oh good, it's over, it's done." And at that moment, she was lying there feeling a little medicated, but at the same time, she was also alert and enjoying that lazy feeling of waking up and feeling completely relaxed. That changed only a few seconds later when she heard the surgeon speak. They were moving around and doing their things, and then all of a sudden she heard him say, "Scalpel, please." And Donna just froze. She thought, "What did I just hear?" And there was nothing that she could do. She had been given a paralytic, which is a common thing they do when they work on the abdomen because it relaxes the abdominal muscles so they don't resist as much when you're actually cutting through them. But unfortunately, the general anesthetic had not worked, but the paralytic did. So at that very second, she panicked. She thought, this cannot be happening. So she waited a few seconds, but then felt the surgeon make the first incision. She did not have words to describe the pain, other than it was absolutely horrific. She could not even open her eyes. The first thing that she tried to do was sit up, but she couldn't move. It felt like literally somebody was sitting on her, weighing her down. And she wanted to say something. She wanted to move, but she couldn't. She was so paralyzed, she couldn't even make tears to cry. And at that point, she could hear her heart rate on the monitor, and it kept getting higher and higher and higher. At this point, she was in a state of sheer terror. She could hear them working on her. She could hear them talking. She felt the surgeon make those incisions and push those instruments through her abdomen. And then she felt the surgeon moving her organs around as he explored inside. And she even heard him say things like,
"Oh, look at that appendix. It's really nice and pink. Yeah, colon looks good. Ovary looks good."
And around this time, she was actually able to twitch her foot. 3 times in a row to show that she was awake. Somebody please help. But each time, someone, like a nurse, put their hand on it to still it without verbally acknowledging that she had even moved it. She began panicking more and had absolutely no idea what to do. And to top it all off, because she was paralyzed, they had intubated her, put her on a breathing machine, and the ventilator that she was put on to breathe only was set for 7 times a minute. So even though her heart rate was up at 148 beats per minute, that's all she got. Those 7 breaths a minute. I dare you to try it. It is very, very hard. She was suffocating, and it felt as though her lungs were literally on fire. And then there was a point actually where she thought they had finished operating and they were starting to do their final things. And that's when she noticed that she was actually able to slightly move her tongue. She realized that the paralytic was starting to wear off. And she thought, I'm going to play with the breathing tube that's still in my throat. So she started wiggling it with her tongue to try to get their attention. And it worked. It did catch the attention of the anesthesiologist. But he must have thought she was coming out of the paralytic more than she was, because he took the tube and pulled it out of her throat. So she laid there thinking, wow, now I am really in trouble. And she already said mental goodbyes to her family because she didn't think she was going to pull through. Now she couldn't even breathe at all. And she could literally hear the nurse yelling at her. She was on one side yelling, saying, "Breathe, Donna, breathe." But there was nothing Donna could do. And she was continuously telling her to breathe. And then she said the most amazing thing happened. She had an out-of-body experience and literally left her body. To quote, she said, "I'm a Christian faith, and I can't say that I went to heaven, but I wasn't on earth either. I knew I was somewhere else. It was quiet. The sounds of the operating room were in the background. I could still hear them, but it sounded as though they were very, very far away. And at this very moment, the fear was gone. The pain was gone. She felt warm. She felt comforted, and most importantly, she felt safe. And instinctively, she said she knew she was not alone, and there was a presence with her. She always said that it was God. It was God with her, because there was absolutely no doubt in her mind that he was right beside her. And then she heard a voice saying, "Whatever happens, you're going to be okay." And at that point, she knew that regardless if she lived or if she died, she would be just fine. And she had been praying throughout the whole thing to keep her mind occupied. She sang to herself and thought of her husband and her children. But when this presence was with her, she thought, please let me die, because I can't do this anymore. But just as quickly as she went to that place, all of a sudden she was back. In the time it takes to snap your fingers, she was back in her body in the operating room once again. She could still hear them working on her, and the nurses still yelling, "Breathe, Donna, breathe." Then, all of a sudden, the anesthesiologist said, "Bag her," and they put a mask on her face and used a manual resuscitator to force air into her lungs. And as soon as they did, the burning sensation that she had been feeling in her lungs left. She was finally relieved, and she started to breathe again. And at that point, the anesthesiologist gave her something to counteract the paralytic. And it didn't take long before she was able to start talking. Later, as she recovered from the ordeal, the surgeon came into her room and grabbed her hand with both of his hands, saying, "I understand there were some problems, Mrs. Penner." And that's when she said to him, "I was awake. I felt you cutting me." And his eyes instantly filled up with tears as he grabbed onto her hands and said, "I am so sorry." She started telling him the different things that she heard him say, the comments he made about her appendix and her internal organs. And he kept saying, "Yes, I said that. Yeah, I said that." And then she said, have you noticed that I have not asked what the diagnosis even was yet? And he looked at her for a moment and said, well, you already know, don't you? And she said, yes, I do. And she told him that the diagnosis was that the surgery went good. But the one thing that I haven't told you guys yet is that this operation lasted for 90 minutes. For an hour and a half, Donna had the worst nightmare she could possibly imagine and was awake for all of it. Imagine that. And rightfully so, a legal claim against the hospital was enacted, which, of course, now is resolved. And immediately after the operation, she was referred to a therapist because she was so traumatized. She didn't even have a clue what day of the week it was on her first appointment. She said it definitely takes its toll on a person, that's for sure. But talking about it has helped her. And after 9 years' time, she was able to tell this story that I am telling you. This story was literally in Donna's words, and I rearranged it to tell it out of first person. And Donna insists that her story is not to lay blame or to point fingers. She wants people to understand that this thing can happen and does happen. She wants to raise awareness and help so that something good can come out of this truly awful experience. 1 or 2 people out of 1,000 are given by an anesthesiologist the paralytic, but not the anesthesia. So let's pray for all those people and hope that they came out of their surgeries quite all right. Whew, that was an intense one, and I hope you really enjoyed it. So thank you for listening to that story. I will be uploading stories 2 to 3 times every week, sometimes with multiple stories in them. So please, if you enjoyed this, take one moment to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up and share this video with everyone that you know on Facebook, on Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever. Okay? I appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.